Welcome to the latest episode of Templar Talks. We have a very exciting show today.
We do indeed.
Hopefully. We've got some good topics to go over and some exciting events coming up. So, topics, what we got for today, Todd?
Right, so we're talking about LEC Ghent. You guys going off to Ghent. The cheating situation on camera. What are our thoughts on that? Twitter drama. How do we feel about what certain people have been making comments about the meta games? Our standard deck choices for the upcoming season, and then talking about how pre-release has been going this week.
Yeah, for sure. And we also have some other exciting events coming up. We're going to be at all the local IRCQs. February 18th, Skyward Games. March 2 and 3, Axion Now. March 9th, Langdon Games. March 10th, Skyward Games, Fire Games. March 24th, Athena Games. And the most important thing is we're going to have coverage from two of them on the 10th of March. Skyward Fire Games is going to be broadcast live by myself and Todd commentating on the desk. And then March 24th, Athena Games is going to be myself on the desk, joined by Pro Tour competitor, all round one of the best Magic players I know, Raoul Zimmerman. So let's be frank, if you want the good quality commentating, ignore everything I'm saying for both, ignore everything Todd's saying for the Skyward one, and just tune into Raoul and zone us out.
No, tune into the other one as well, but but maybe.
But yeah, we hope to see you at those. It's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, we will be live with our Templar After Dark show following Friday Night Magic. We're going to be a little earlier than usual. It's going to be February the 16th because unfortunately Todd's on holiday the last Friday of the month.
I am indeed.
So we're making the schedule up as we go along. So I guess straight into the topics.
Tell us all about LEC Ghent. What was it like?
Yeah, it was a hell of an experience. It was the first time I've been to anything that big. I only started playing Magic in COVID times, right? So I had a ticket to I think it was Magic Fest London that got cancelled, the one in like 2020. Or
that would have been good.
Yeah, that was going to be my first event. A load of us had said we were going to go. We didn't, obviously. I don't know. Have you been? You've been to GPs, right? So you've experienced that larger side of Magic.
And I vividly remember actually playing a modern main event. It was team trios. And I was just like green, playing Magic. I was loving my deck. I was playing Hardened Scales. I was playing Hardened Scales Mirror. And then a person from Athena Games came up behind me and said, that's ex-Pro Tour winner, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, thanks for that. I was just really enjoying my life, and now I'm full of anxiety.
Yeah, see, I didn't... I got a little bit of that. So, in terms of my record, so obviously there's a video... Watch it. Honestly, it's not that informative. It's a bit of a blur. So the first 2 minutes or so is like this happy montage of travelling to Ghent, and the real story of that was our day started at 1 p.m. UK time, and Rocco, captain of the team, was supposed to be at my house shortly after that. It gets to 2 o'clock, and we're at a different location at someone else's house, trying to find out where Rocco is. He missed a bus broke down. The buses where we live are awful. And we ended up picking him up at like 2:30. So we were an hour and a half late setting off. We drove to Romford to get the tube to St Pancras to get the Eurostar to Belgium. All in all, from leaving my house to getting to our hotel room was about 10 hours. Of which 2 hours was driving, the rest was like tubing and training. So we didn't really set ourselves up too well. We got to St Pancras, and I've been on the Eurostar a few times, and usually there's like 50 people in security. You kind of trundle through. There was about 400 people in this queue.
Wow!
And we went to join it, and they go, no, that's for the train before you. You're not allowed to join the queue for another 5 minutes. Which is also when the other Paris train will be boarding. I'm like, this seems a bit unusual. And it turns out they'd shut 2/3, like 3/4 of the terminals.
Wow.
So it was packed. So by the time we were allowed to join the queue, for those familiar with St Pancras station, King's Cross, it was out of the whole Eurostar, past all of the shops. And we were where it like opens back out past all the shops, joining the queue.
Wow.
So we boarded the train like 2 minutes before it was supposed to depart, and then we sat on the train for like another 20-30 minutes before it even departed. So it was, in general, awful. Like
it
was proper shit. And in hindsight, we should have gone earlier. We should have gone,
Yeah.
not even necessarily a day earlier, but like we figured leaving at midday was reasonable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we should have left in the morning. But yeah, so the travel was bad. It set us up for failure. 5 hours sleep later, getting to the venue, and no water later because of there was one food truck in this industrial.
Yeah,
site,
I heard about the venue not being that good.
I didn't. So we spoke to you take it with a grain of salt. We spoke to the bartender at our hotel afterwards, and he said basically that area, no one drinks tap water. So they have no public like fountains or faucets, and there was no water being. You got a bottle of water in your bag when you got there, like from Legacy. But beyond that, you were kind of at the mercy of either running 10 minutes to the hotel and spending €4 on, you know what I mean, a bottle of euro, or lining up in the venue and still spending €3 for a bottle of water. But at least it was in the venue, and you know. So your round finishes, you try and get water, the queue's too big, you go to the next round and you're just dehydrated. And, you know, day 2, when we weren't playing, because I crashed out at 2-4, Rocco crashed out at 3-4, Ed crashed out at 1-4, and Jack did the hero run, who travelled with us at 0-4.
Yeah.
But day 2, when we went back and we were doing side events and stuff, we went into Ghent beforehand and bought a load of 2 litre. You know what I mean? It was totally fine. You just had to know that was the situation. My assumption was there would be somewhere to buy water. But it wasn't.
See,
great.
Phil Mead didn't tell us about this when he was telling us about how to prepare for big competitive events.
See, I sympathise a little bit in that Rocco went to LEC Athens, and he said this was like so much worse. And I think a lot of it was because if there'd been that one food truck with 400 entrants, maybe you'd be fine. But the problem was there were 950 people in the main event, on top of everyone that had failed the LCQ that was doing side events. So there was a lot of people in this building trying to eat and drink. So yeah, I played quite badly. I didn't get that anxiety. I got a little bit of it. It was actually an opponent I beat. They were a really nice guy, but I was speaking to my amulet opponent, and I think I was 1-2. So I needed to win that game, like, you know, to get him with a chance. Round 1, Murktide, I played badly. Round 2, smashed a zoo player, banter. Round 3, Living End, so bad matchup. Round 4, it was like the make or break round.
Yeah.
Amulet Titan, okay matchup. And it got into like game 3. Game 2 was close, but I lost. Game 3, I was back on the play. And I was just kind of making small talk, like, oh, so, you know, did you qualify online? And one person, he's like, oh, I qualified in Lille. And I'm like, wasn't that the last regional championship? And he's like, yeah, I came 26th. And I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, it was something like that. They qualified from the last one. They were really, really nice. And took that one. But then the next round, it all went downhill for me. I think I spoke about it briefly on the video with Rocco, but I won game 1 against Wizards. I was playing Rhinos for context, and smashed game 1. I don't really know what happened. They kept a one-lander and then didn't interact with me at all, so I just...
But that's not always good, right? Because you get the win, but you don't know exactly what they're doing, right? What they're going to bring in.
Well, but it was open deck list, so you have a pretty good idea. But then... Unfortunately, the games around me had finished quite quickly. I had Charles Elatambi to my right, and he was against another local player. There were 2 players I knew to my right, so it was kind of chat. They finished up really quickly. It was Sky from Brighton Way.
Yeah.
And is it Brighton Way? South Coast, somewhere on the South Coast. And they finished up, and unfortunately, our table was then surrounded by a load of very loud Italian gentlemen who were just playing pickup games and just yelling and laughing and having a good time. And I get it, but it's also like, could you just play over on the free space tables and not yell in my ear? So at this point, I'm pissed off. I've had 5 hours sleep. I've had no water. I've got a headache, and I just started punting away. And then I punted that game, punted the next game, punted my next round, and went, fuck this. I'm going back to the hotel. And then got assaulted by Benton Madsen saying, do you want to play Vintage Cube? And I got peer pressured into playing Vintage Cube.
But was that the most fun you had at the weekend?
It was a roller coaster of emotions. So I felt like I was being sharked because I agreed to it. And then there's a group of us just following Benton kind of chanting vintage, and you're like, okay, this is banter. And then there were a few other players really good players like Ben Jones. I can't remember who else. Charles was there. Nico was there. I can't remember the name of the other player. Everyone was really nice. It was a really good time. But Charles kind of leant over to me on the way to the table and just goes, "Oh yeah, we play for money, by the way." And I'm like what? No. So I end up signing up to Team Vintage Draft Cube for money. And luckily, I draw onto the team with Ben Jones and Benton Madsen, and they go 3-0 and 3-0, and I'm just sat there like, hey, I got 20 euros or whatever it was. It was a good time. It was fun, but by the time I got back to the hotel after that, I was just done. And I think it's a shame because I think all of us could have played better. Because it's excuses and it's whining and there's hindsight, but like there was a lot of what's the word for it? Like justification, like justifying our decisions in that you were here. We spent a lot of time going through deck choices and tweaking the deck, and the deck we played and the sideboard guide we made was almost identical to every deck and sideboard guide. And obviously, there's not too much you can do differently, but it felt really good that the sideboard guide we'd kind of come up with on our own back was near identical to the sideboard guide that the guy that won the tournament ran. You're kind of like, okay, we were on the right track. We played badly. At least we made the right choice before the tournament.
Yeah, and to clarify for anyone who didn't tune in for that, that was you and Ed playing Rhinos.
Yes, played the same deck.
Same deck list, same sideboard guide, and Rocco went for his faithful amulet.
Yeah. But he did say, actually, I'm talking on his behalf, but I believe the one thing he wished he did differently was he didn't play Radiant Fountain in the list at all.
Yeah.
And that was a huge difference maker. But honestly, like, there was... So it's the psychology of it. We joked about it in the video a little bit, but round one, Rocco got paired into Arch, who... Arch is an unbelievably good player who just grinds these Axion events, consistently qualifies to the RCs, and it was heartbreaking to see the effect of the fatigue because we had finished our round, we'd lost, and we were behind Rocco and we could see what was in his hand. We didn't we stood back, so we didn't want to get involved in the game. And it was game 3, looked at the life pad, and Rocco had definitively won. So we started to walk away, and then I heard Rocco cast a Summoner's Pact, and I was like, "What? You don't need to do that."
Yeah.
And then we watched it go awry because he'd miscounted his mana. He thought he could play 2 Titans instead of 1, so he went for a double Titan line. And I spoke to Arch about it afterwards. I spoke to Rocco about it after the tournament because I didn't want, you don't want mental.
You want him to have the rest of the rounds.
But he said as soon as it had happened, he knew it had happened. But it was quite funny talking to Arch afterwards. He said it's what you always have to do with Amulet players, because he said he was sat there and he knew that he'd lost the game. And then he said he sat there for a good 60 seconds, and at which point he realised Rocco didn't know that he'd lost the game. Yeah. So he's just like, well, I don't scoop because sometimes they don't get there. So it was a baptism of fire for sure. I have a massive... So for those that haven't seen the news, Legacy have lost the contract for the European events, and I do hope that with the new company taking over, the price structure... The old company, the new company. Yeah. I really hope the price structure becomes better, because I think you had to guarantee $300, which is the minimum amount of money for a 950 person tournament. I think you had to go 11-4 to guarantee 300. I know Sean Goddard dropped at X5 because he said, it was the mentality of, well, even if I go 10-5, I've got to play another 3 rounds, win them all, and I might still not go 300, so I'd rather just go do side events. So it was really brutal. I think there were... we've been quite prepared today. We've actually got some relevant stats and stuff in front of us, but I didn't look this up. I think some 12 and 3 players might not have got qualification to the Pro Tour. It was really, you had to perform exceptionally well. So in some ways, I'm kind of glad I didn't grind it out to go, 9-6 or 10-5 and then miss out after the grueling challenge.
So in short, right, you've done it. Congratulations, you and Ed. First time getting to that level event. Rocco's obviously been there before. What would you do differently?
Straight up, it's just the travel. That is literally it. I wouldn't. You know, I'm spoilers. It's closed deck list, so I shouldn't be saying this, but I will be playing Rhinos for. Well, I might play Merfolk actually. Don't hold me to that because it's less of a big event. But I will be sticking on Rhinos for comp events. I'm happy with my deck choice. I'm happy with my play in the all of the bad decisions I made. I recognised instantly, recognised it was fatigue, adjusted for the next. You know what I mean? Like
round, yeah.
It was pure fatigue for me, and I know that's just an excuse, and I should have played better. I believe I can play better and should. And you know, for those that have played Vintage Cube and drafts with me and think I'm a terrible Magic player, I am. I have memorised Modern. Beyond Modern, I'm terrible. If you come up against me at Standard, I'll CQ.
How did you do it pre-release last night?
2-1.
So not that bad. Like limited is the baptism of fire.
Oh no! I punted again. So I read my morph card as being red-white to flip, and I had Impact Tremors in play, and it turned into 2-1s. It created 2 creatures, and my opponent was dead. And I read it as red-white, put it back down, drew a clue, like just trying to dig for a red mana, and then read it again and was like, oh, I could have just had these 2 white. I lost. Cool.
Oh, no.
I'm terrible. Even at Modern, I'm pretty bad. But I've memorised Modern a lot more than other formats, and that's my comfort. And yeah, I'd just travel again. But honestly, I wanna go to more Magic events abroad, and I want to try and, you know, I want to go to Naples regardless of if I qualify. I think it's a good time. I want to catch up with people, like hanging out with. You know, it was quite funny to have a Love Actually moment with Will Hall on the commentary desk because he'd lost his voice. So me and Rocco were having the conversation with the writing out the felt tip and the the signs being held up. It was great to meet Ben. He stayed with Rocco. He was a great laugh. It felt good to see a lot of those familiar faces and equally meet new people.
And I think that's what you should go to these events, even if you qualify, right? Obviously, it's nice to do well at these tournaments, but you should go expecting nothing, right? Than to have a good time.
It's good vibes. And I also, to show if you can brush it off, the psychology of it, Nico, someone we've met at loads of vaccine events, has travelled to Langdon a few times. He was like really happy with his play. He scrubbed out, like he 2-4, 3-4, whatever. Reset, went to a different city in Belgium and won like a legacy tournament and qualified for the legacy European whatever. So like if you're going with, sometimes the luck isn't there.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. But I guess we should move on to the drama, right?
So obviously you're on location. Might not have picked up on this but I was watching coverage, looking at Twitter, and there was an accusation of cheating, right? I looked at the footage. A player was searching their library for a land, going through this was all on stream as well, so you probably find that on Twitter. Going through their deck, popped up a grief. I'd put it to the top of their library.
No. So they put it to the middle of their library.
Sure.
And then they kept sifting, got to the middle, and then put it to the top.
Oh, sure. So they basically moving it around in their library, thinking about it, probably. No assumptions yet. Pop it on top of their deck, carry on shuffling, and then present their deck for their opponent to cut, which, they cut. Grief goes somewhat. We all knew it was on top. We were watching the footage. The player probably knows it's on top, right? That's where they've put it consciously, I imagine. And it created a bit of an uproar, didn't it? And but whether people were saying, well, was that intentionally trying to manipulate their library? And then arguing, but they presented it to their opponent to cut, which for me is a standard, right? When we play kitchen table or whatever, I'm often can't be bothered, you just tap the table or whatever. I think it's pretty standard that during comp Magic you cut your opponent's deck every time it's presented to you.
Yeah.
So I think they knowingly expected their opponent to cut the deck. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. A lot of people were saying, why would you be trying to get a grief to the top when it's a bad draw? But my mindset is, when you present the deck, you're expecting your opponent to cut, shuffle, and usually an opponent, even if they shuffle, will shuffle so the top cards don't move that much, and then they'll cut so that the top card will still be down. So you still have the knowledge of like that grief is probably going away. So I don't know. I think it was a well-known Magic player playing against them, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Who was it? Canister? Was it Canister?
They could have been Canister, yeah.
But Canister, the head judges... So the head judges came out and said there was no cheating. Canister said there was no cheating. A lot of people that have spoke to the judges have since said there's no cheating. But I think I think what happened is they were declumping their deck. They found the grief, they put it to the middle, and then they found another grief and maybe moved that away. Something like that, just to spread them out. And I think a lot of Magic players do that. It's like pile shuffling, right? Pile shuffling. Mana weaving, as some say. It's frowned upon, and mana weaving has been seen as like, this is cheating, like that. But in some ways, pile shuffling is the same kind of thing. So I don't really understand the ideology of like, where do we draw the line, right? Like, because it will never truly be random, because say you pile shuffle, you're intentionally splitting up and mixing up your deck to make it less clumpy. Is that bad?
Yeah.
So I think he was just declumping.
Yeah. Or like patterns of draws, right? If you play a match, right? So a series of 3 games, it goes 2-1 or whatever, and the pattern of your game is like you're drawing the same things around the same time, and you just want to freshen up.
Yeah.
Right. A pile shuffle totally changes that pattern that you've been kind of drawing your cards. I agree. I think when I crack a fetch, right, my instinct reaction is to go, well, what was I going to draw if I hadn't cracked the fetch, right? It's a big decision in Modern. You're always like, do I hold the fetch?
Or do I crack it?
Do I crack it because am I going to draw the land, or do I want to draw a land and don't want to take a land out of my deck? And you look, when you crack your fetch, you look at the cards. Sometimes if you see like 2 griefs next to each other, maybe split them apart. Or I've certainly done things like that, not even particularly consciously. I mean, for me, if I see like 3 or 4 lands together when I have fetched, I will always spend an extra 2 or 3 shuffles. Yeah, because I'm like, I really need to. Yeah. Well, we all have that pattern of thinking, right, where we're trying to chance probability, right? Yeah, interesting one. I think it draws the conversation up, definitely, when things like that happen. But like you said, I probably agree with the consensus that it probably wasn't cheating, right? Yeah. Or even if that anybody considers that cheating, well, it's not explicitly in the rules that you can't do those things, right? They didn't manipulate their deck. Do you know what I mean? They shuffled some cards around in a very specific way, but it at the end of the day,
it's still randomness they're still presenting.
Yeah, it's not gonna, the result at the end of whatever they were doing was not, and it kind of, when I was watching it, I was thinking of the time, and I don't remember the people involved, but the cheating on camera where the player picked up, they fetched, and they didn't have the stomping ground in their library, and they picked it up from the graveyard and put it into their deck, and I'm like, that's very obviously changing zones, and what this person did was not in it. Was, we were speculating, right, on their thought patterns. There's no clear evidence there, but it's let's applaud everybody for picking those kinds of things up, because it's good that we hold professional Magic, competitive Magic.
I mean, I think for me, like, it sounds like a weird statement, but I think people should lock eyes while they shuffle their deck and then hand the deck to their opponent, and their opponent should not break eye contact and just shuffle the deck, because or you just fetch the card out of your deck and you just give it to your opponent, right? Because if they never look at your deck and they're just shuffling looking at you, they don't know the order, right? Even if they're a card cheat, they can't manipulate the deck, but you're trusting your opponent to do the whole shot. Like, I don't know, there's no perfect solution. It's why in games like poker you have a dealer, but obviously it's not feasible to do that in games of.
But certainly this shuffle is my favourite, where you both like, oh
yeah,
and you're holding the deck off to the side, and I think it's important to keep the game there in that level of high regard where you respect your opponent and we try and collectively clamp down on any of that kind of manipulation.
It does draw the question though, maybe in like, I know this is an extreme thing and it's nothing, I don't think this has ever happened at PTs or whatever. Why in finals doesn't a judge just manipulate the libraries, right? I know there hasn't been cheating at that high level, but obviously we had the infamous situation with the Tron lands that were marked.
Yeah.
If you get to the top 8, and at that point, the top 8, like you see at these PT events, there are like judges hovering over every table. It's like, well, just pick up the library.
Yeah.
Like,
but again, then you say that, but then I'm thinking, well, who's paying the judges? Right, suddenly we've got a whole nother layer of cheating where who's judges on whose side,
I don't think there's a solution. It's just it's funny to me. Well, I don't know. I think if you are cheating at a card game, like it's what you want it more than I do. Yeah. And I know when there's money involved, like it's a different aspect, but like F&M, I don't cut my opponent's decks. Yeah. And I always make the point of pre-release and stuff of just being like, well, if you're cheating, you want it more than me. Like, it's F&M. You know what I mean? I don't. Yeah. I get it. But also, it's quite funny. I have an interaction with Michael about it. Is Michael doesn't cut his deck. So Michael shuffles, then presents. Whereas for me, I shuffle, and then I cut 2 or 3 times and then present. Yeah. So, and he'll just tap on. Like, I know we're not cheating, but for me, I'm like, if you haven't cut at all, you've just mixed up the top cut. You know what I mean? Like, just cut it a bit while you're shuffling. Yeah. So I cut his deck because I'm like, just cut the fucking thing and I won't touch it.
But that gets to almost religious levels of oh, I've got touch wood. I've got to do my little spooky stuff to make sure that my opponent hasn't razzle dazzled me.
I feel it. But moving on to more drama on Twitter.
Do we call this drama?
Well, I mean,
we hot takes.
It's a hot. I mean, we always say it's a section about drama on Twitter, right? So this was the best we had this week. So I guess it's not really drama. I just think, as you say, it's a hot take.
Yeah.
So after the RC, Mengucci, Andrea Mengucci, for those who don't know, a very big Magic player, great guy for the community, came out and basically said it's the most unbalanced modern since MH2. Banning of Fury and Beans made Yawgmoth and Amulet too strong, and Rhinos is the only deck good against both. The metagame was balanced pre-ban, and now it is not. They shouldn't ban Scam because its win rate wasn't high enough. You can go and see the exact thing. I'm not going to read it verbatim because it's quite a long tweet. But it's basically, please don't keep banning stuff just because the community cry about it. I agree with that. I fully 100% on board. If, like, straight up after, like, it ties into it, the fact that he's saying Yawgmoth was too good. I did see people calling for Agatha's Soul Cauldron to be banned in Modern because it's broken.
What, again?
Yeah, straight after again. And it's like, oh, you mean the 4 Yawgmoth opponents or whatever that made top 8 and then all lost? Like, it's broken, it's busted. Yeah. So I guess my point here is, obviously, there's that statement of Yawgmoth and Amulet are too good now. Yawgmoth had a 53.7% win rate over all the RCs, and Amulet had a 51.5%. For me, I don't think that's too good.
No, I agree. Can we let's talk about where the data comes from, though? For clarification.
So that is a good question, and I don't actually know.
So
it's a Twitter user I know that always puts up the stats.
Frank Carsten, the stat man, the magic stat man. Yeah. Obviously, this is from RCs in Europe and Brazil.
Was it America as well?
No, not American. Just RCs in Europe and Brazil.
Sure.
And we've got a breakdown, which is pretty much the top 10 decks are under 55% win rate, right?
No, with the exception of 5-color creativity, which edged it at 55.4.
Yeah.
And I think to make a statement that says you should only ban on win rates, like if something is oppressively winning, like Eldrazi Winter, that makes sense. But to then, in the same tweet, I think this is why it's such a hot take for me, in the same tweet to then say Amulet and Yawgmoth are too good, when their win rates are barely above 50-50, is a little bit of a stretch. And I will also point out that, Beans and Fury were banned. They were both played in 4-color Omnath, which is the second highest win rate deck right now. So imagine, I know there's, Scam would keep it down, and other decks would keep it down, but like, I kind of think that deck would probably be a little better if those were in the format. And especially with Beans, Fury I'm very passionate about. I think Fury was a great ban.
100%,
But Beans, that was more of a these games take too long situation.
I agree. Yeah.
And straight up, the 4-color Omnath deck is still pretty painful to play against because it takes a while.
I'm assuming, though I haven't looked at the exact list, they've gone back to the One Ring, right? Which
One
has
Ring,
that
Delighted Halfling, Teferi.
long pattern of, well, I'm going to draw cards, but I've probably still lost, but maybe I've won.
Yeah, it was quite funny because my opponent in my last round was 4-color Omnath. I won game 1. He won game 2. I punted. I had the game definitively won, and I categorically punted. And game 3, we both looked at the clock, and it was 8 minutes, and both of us are just turbo playing at that point, to the point that you're not actually thinking about your decisions because you're so worried about the clock. And I think if Beans is in that deck, it exemplifies it tenfold.
Well, because, I don't know. Now they deck themselves, right?
Yeah, sure. But I think it's always weird to me, and I'm going a little bit off topic here, but a lot of people focus on Modern was better in X, Modern was better here. And there was a conversation last night in the team chat regarding specific Pro Tools that were good. And I watched one of them. I was watching the final. I was like, you know what? I didn't play Magic back then. I'm going to see this. And it was Splinter Twin versus Amulet, Summer Bloom. And I sat there and watched the Amulet player take 11 minutes to do their turn 4 and not win. And I'm just sat there how are you saying that this is good Magic? It's not. And all the commentators the whole time are well, he hasn't won, so if the Splinter Twin player draws the Splinter Twin, they've won. And it's just oh, okay,
What I like about this particular graphic for Modern RCs in Europe and Brazil is that looking at this and I'm thinking, well, if I turned up to a tournament playing Creativity, Omnath, Yawgmoth, Shadow, Rhinos, Living End, Amulet Titan, I could win with any of those decks on a good day, right? And I think that is a good place for the format to be.
Yeah,
I
completely agree.
We turn up and we've all come to a consensus that, Rhinos is the best deck. Well, you're going to play Rhinos Mirrors all day. Or actually someone goes, well, I think everyone's going to turn up with Rhinos. I'm going to bring 4-color Omnath. I think that's where we want to be, right? Is that each tournament you turn up to, there's a different consensus, and actually that makes it more of an exciting meta game. And one weekend you're going to watch loads of that matchup, then the next weekend everyone's going to go, well, that was last week, so we better not bring that again. And it just makes it a bit more fresh and a bit more exciting week on, week out.
I mean, also I think just looking at the matchup, so there's the graph of how each matchup does against each other, and there's only 2 or 3 dark red chunks on that whole graph, which means there aren't, and equally green, right, for the opposite end of the matchup, but there aren't that many games where, as an example, one of them, Rhinos into Living End, you're probably actually, you know what, we have the data, Rhinos into Living End specifically is 25% win rate, right? So that's an example of what I don't like in Modern. Scales into Amulet, 22%. I don't like those. I've just lost the signal lotteries.
I didn't,
Whereas, a lot of these are the 55, 45, 60, 40. It's it's a better place for Magic to be, and I find it really weird, again, to call for no bans because community get mad, agree, but then also say, but these decks are too good, because it's just kind of look at the stats. I'm a huge believer in looking at the stats, and I don't understand why, I don't know, Rakdos stayed around after the bans. It's still a deck that did okay. It's not good, but it's there.
And we have these moments in the team as well, right? We're a small sample size of the community, right, where we sit down at a table and we're testing And one of my teammates, I won't call them out specifically, goes, "Oh no, that's categorically you're going to lose every game against that matchup." It was mono black control into Amulet. They were like, "Oh no, Amulet wins that 80% of the time." And then I actually play it out, and I'm go, "Well, I don't. Is it actually as polarizing of a matchup as that, or are you not playing the matchup in a different way than you could?" Right, and a lot of this feely kind of bans where you're going, "Oh, this feels bad that I'm losing this matchup all the time." Well, is there a way that you can play the deck differently, or is there a sideboard plan that you can play that actually makes that matchup different?
And over these RCs, it's 46-54.
Exactly. So you look at the stats, and actually the stats will tell you that maybe you're not playing that matchup the way you could, and someone is, they've cracked that matchup specifically, and you don't need to ban that one card that you can't deal with.
And I'm happy to name and shame. A teammate of ours, James, was playing Rhinos throughout the scam meta, right? And he just said it's miserable, it's unwinnable. Like, if you get griefed, if you get fury, you're just blown out. And I just said, "Oh, are you playing any subtleties main board?" And his response was, "No." I said, "Oh, how many have you got side?" "None." like sometimes you have to kind of think, okay, so you're getting blown out by creatures coming into the battlefield. Why don't you try some tech to maybe stop that happening? And I think too many times people just get those weird feelings about stuff, and it's like I'm annoyed. I'm going against what I've just said there. Like, I'm annoyed at the RC. I bent and played 22 lands because we looked at the stats. It was more consistent, but I'd been playing 21 lands in Rhinos the whole time, and it felt better for me. And I know statistically you're less likely to draw the third land, but it still felt there was more agency, and you have to ride that luck at an RC. And I wish I'd just rolled the dice, to get those edges. But equally, it's kind of like you do have to take a step back and do what I did, and look at the numbers and look at the percentage chances of drawing those 3 lands, because that's what you need to do to execute your game plan. And you just have to go with the numbers, even if it doesn't feel
and let's
right.
Not forget that there's cards that are in Modern right now that people have called to be banned, like the One Ring and Bowmasters. That actually they're not as bad. They're not as feel bad as they were 2-3 weeks ago or months. That actually we found a way of managing them in the format where you go, okay, well, actually I've got Force and Negation, or I've got.
But before Lord of the Rings, everyone was mad about Ragavan. They print a solution to Ragavan. Ragavan play goes through the floor. Like, I don't know, like, people just. Yeah. So again, agree with Mengu. Don't listen to the community for bannings. But I do think it's a bit of a weird statement to say that Amulet and Yoga. And
I think Modern's in a good place. Right? I think that it's very diverse. Right? It's diverse. It's interesting. Games are exciting and different. I certainly enjoyed watching the coverage. So yeah, I'd watch more.
Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to the Axion RCQ the most because it's modern. You know. And I really hope we don't return to Pioneer. I hope we just go. I hope the new guys coming in are like looking at that data of user participation and see that Modern had like double the people turning up, and they just go, let's just go back to Modern. Let's skip Pioneer.
But talking about meta games, right? We're going from the Modern meta game with the highest deck across those RCs being 55% of the meta. Or no, that wasn't meta share. That was win rates. Right?
Yeah, that was win rates.
But meta share is pretty good. Standard meta shares.
Yeah, I think I don't think I have the stat to hand.
I can remember the stats pretty well because there was two big.
Oh, here we are. It's a very top skewed graph with 15.6%. So this is from the 17th of November to the end of January on all matches, cut at 1.22%. So anything below that isn't taken into account here. It's other, yeah. But Domain 15.6%, Esper 15.4%. Then you go down to 8.4 for Mono Red Aggro, 8 for Rakdos, and then you're in the 5s and 6s, and it does feel standard. I've been playing a bit more Arena because we're going into standard season. Mono Red is the deck I've been playing on there because I had most of it, so it was cheap to craft. Absolutely miserable right now.
What, as in you don't feel like it's winning games, or
because mono red in standard is not burn, it's creature based. There's so many tools in the format to board wipe deal. You know what I mean? You don't have to, like in modern, a lot of the time you're playing around open mana because you're worried about counter spells. In standard, it feels like there's more removal and less counters. So you could just get the creature resolved and have your whole board out, and then the board just gets wiped. Like one great example actually was I got burnt by it at pre-release. I had about 6 creatures out on the board, only 2 cards in hand, and then they had no cards in hand, hellbent, and just top deck that 4-mana board wipe. And it's just like,
the one that we couldn't remember the name of.
Yeah. Still can't remember the name of it. It hurt me yesterday, but I don't know. It feels like in a format where resources are really important for stuff like that to exist, like Leyline Binding with Triumphs, for example, a 1 mana, on turn 3, deal with anything is pretty. That's like something you expect in modern, like cheaty, weird situation, like free spells, cheap spells, cheating stuff out. But the fact that it happens in standard it's weird, but it's fine. In terms of deck selection for the actual season, I'm not 100% on what I'm going to play yet. I wanted to play mono red, but I didn't own it, and I'm glad I haven't bought it because I don't actually think it's playable.
Well, do you think it changes? Right, I think it's what you've talked about. Right, the gap in the deck is that it doesn't have 2-face burn. I think murders,
shock, lightning helix,
stoke the flames.
Think Stoke the Flames, yeah. Obviously, you still got Play with Fire.
Yeah.
You still got Lightning Strike.
Yeah. I think it gets a little bit better. Yeah. I mean, I like red. I'm like a linear game plan. I'm certainly not going to spend a chunk on standard myself because it's such a brief window that we get to play, and I've opted in to do some streaming, which will be exciting. So yeah, I think I'm looking forward to watching it. Certainly hoping that we don't get that meta share in our local communities where there's just 15% of the field is either Esper or Domain. I'm personally gonna look at Convoke because my favourite standard deck of all time has to be Jeskai tokens. There was nothing better than
Did you ever play
Boros
Convoke and Pioneer?
No, not really.
Yeah, because I
played mono white.
Most of that deck is just in standard, so you can do a lot of it.
But Jeskai, right? You get Jeskai Ascendancy out, you make some 1/1s or whatever, and then you stoke the flames, and your Jeskai Ascendancy untaps all your creatures again. I'll just deal you 4 by tapping these 4 creatures. Oh, now they're attacking you.
I quite like the I know we spoke about it last time, the Impact Tremors card as well. That's an anthem.
Yeah.
I think there's some cool stuff there, but my biggest worry about standard right now is it feels like it's hyper aggressive or hyper control, and there's not really any mid range decks at the moment, which is fine because I'm typically an aggro player, so that suits me. But when there's no mid range decks, it feels quite miserable playing aggro into aggro, and it feels quite miserable playing aggro into control. Usually you want to get up against the mid range, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it all pans out. I think at the moment, so you're leaning towards Convoke.
I'll be playing a linear game plan, whether it's a mono color deck or a dual color deck. Obviously we've got to see how these new cards land.
Yeah, we'll just net deck some.
We are the net deckers, so.
I mean, I think Boros Burn if it can work, or I have Azorius Soldiers kind of ready to go, and I do think that maybe that's going to be fine. I know there's the new blue-white counter spell. You probably have that in the sideboard for board wipe shenanigan stuff. So maybe that can get there. I'm unsure. There does seem like there's a lot of strong cards coming in with Karlov though, so I don't know how much the meta is going to be shaken out.
And let's not forget Sheldred's still about. There's still some pretty Atraxa. That makes you life gain makes your aggro game plan pretty miserable.
But
Cavernous Souls, right? So
I think the main thing is I'm going to leave it to the young dingoes of the world to come up with the new broken meta, and I'll just.
I don't like Mengucci's opinion on modern, but certainly you could build me a deck.
That is the true net deck way. I don't know. We'll see how it pans out, but Karlov is bringing a new load of cards, and obviously we've just had pre-release. I wanted to. This could be a bit of a hot one. Firstly, I want to give props to Athena's pre-release. I went yesterday, Friday night. Their Friday night pre-releases have been consistently getting bigger, and yesterday was 50 people sold out. I've heard whispers that it may be expanding to a few more people for the next one because they are consistently selling out tickets. It's a great buzz. I will say over half the field are Commander players. But what I love about it is a lot of those Commander players are starting to get in Standard. And I did hear a lot of people say, I didn't even know what Standard was, but I went on Wednesday or whatever. So it's good. It's good that people are coming into the game. That's why I like pre-release. I buy 3 boosters every pre-release to give away to my opponents. I am a huge advocate of let's try and rope them in. We need more people for the format to, the game to survive, realistically. Yeah. But the hot debate is really, I obviously love pre-release. I like that buzz. And you infamously really don't like pre-release. I don't think you've been to I don't actually think since we've been friends, since we met like a year and a half, 2 years ago or so. When did we actually? It was probably like 2 years ago, right?
I don't know.
No, neither do I. But it hasn't been long because it was post pandemic.
Yes.
It was just before Templar was formed, which is only a year and a half now.
So you'd already been doing the EDH stuff over lockdown, right? I wasn't even aware that was happening.
Well, I suppose we briefly played like Commander and stuff before the team.
Maybe.
Yeah, on Mondays because you had like Ragga Dragger and.
Yeah, maybe.
So probably about 2 years. But my main point in that time, I don't think I've ever seen you at a pre-release.
You're not wrong. Yeah. And it's not because I've never been to a pre-release to add. I used to do the midnight. I used to do the whole weekends, right? You get a discount if you went to all pre-releases, right? And I did somewhat enjoy them, but it comes from my developing distaste for limited formats in that I don't particularly like the insecurity of going, well, I'm either going to draw one of the basic lands that the store has given me or I'm going to draw the £30 mythic that I pulled, or I'm going to draw a common that I just didn't want to put into my deck. But I had to because I needed to have 40 cards or I needed that other creature.
So I agree. So my first pre-release was Throne of Eldraine. I don't actually know if I ever went to pre-release for that. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I did a draft. Whatever. Maybe I did. Fuck knows. Did I do CLU? Whatever.
I remember.
My main point is, as I've gone to pre-releases, the sets seem to have got more, at least for me when I'm deck building, I'm having to cut as opposed to having to, shit, what do I put in here? These are all terrible.
But is that just you becoming a better player and having a better understanding
I
of the
think
cards?
they're making the sets better for sealed. And draft as well. I think the archetypes you can build, the strategies you can employ, like this set was very clearly designed to be 2 color pairings. I forced 4 colors because I'm a nutcase. But most people I saw that were doing well were just in solid 2 colors, and they had a pretty good, time doing that. I think they've done it so you can pair stuff well. There's a lot of good commons. There's a lot of good uncommons. So it's not like, obviously, if you get a couple of bomb mythics, if you're a decent Magic player, you're gonna have a good time. But
I don't think I'll ever be won over by pre-release. I don't think it's going to happen for me because even when you're talking about good limited formats, I've been I go to the Axion events, I scrub out of Modern and I look around the room and I go, oh, and then Francois tells me, he goes, oh, there's a mystery booster draft or what was the really good set, the remastered one?
Time Spiral
Remastered. Even the best sealed draft experiences you could have.
Yeah, not.
I go no.
Speaking of someone,
no, thank you.
Someone that loves draft. Just a funny anecdote from Ghent. Obviously, Rocco was rooming with Benton, and we got coffee in the morning, and he left to go his separate way. We left to go to the main event because he played the LCQ and the Classic qualifier. So the Saturday for him was he didn't qualify in the LCQ. He did re-qualify for Naples in the Classic. That was sick. But yeah, he didn't qualify for the Saturday, so he was obviously going to do side events. And we parted ways as we went to the main event. He's like, "Yeah, I'm going to go get a coffee, do a bit of exploring Ghent." By the end of round 1, when we'd lined up to get our goodie bags, we looked over at the sealed tables and just saw him ravaging packs, like building a deck. And it's like, "Oh, how was Ghent?" Like, you lasted 45 minutes, outside of the event, and he was back to pack cracking, which was quite funny. But I think seeing a lot of these, like the whole Vintage Cube situation there, people playing between rounds like you guys do with Commander, that I think is unhinged. People were like, yeah, but people were like playing 8 hours of Modern and then being like, "Oh, I've crashed out. Cube?" And I'm sat there like, bed? Shower? Like, let's go. Let's not keep playing Magic. I can't. But I think it is a different... I'm not that level. Like, I limited as you alternative Friday night, but I think some people are just more into Magic than we are. To be realistic, I think we're passionate players, but we typically, especially, like, we always talk about Modern. Modern's the thing we've honed in on. We know the format well. It's what we play. We net deck. It's what we like. And I think that a lot of other people are more... They're the crafters. They're the young dingos. They're the people that come up with the decks. We're the people that copy them.
Yeah. And again, Cube's another format that I'm not particularly interested in. I went round someone's house for a Cube, and I lost interest after round 1. I'm not going to lie.
I'm surprised that I enjoyed Vintage Cube more than I thought I would, but I also didn't enjoy it that much. I enjoyed, like, the people were nice and it was fun.
I think at the end of the day, we're in Magic for the gathering.
Yeah,
as much as we are for the Magic.
Gameplay. Yeah. Which I think is why I don't play Met Go and sit there and grind out on my own.
Yeah. But I appreciate everyone who does. Please share all your data with me. Phil Mead.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess that's maybe just the reality, but it's just different strokes for different folks, I guess. But yeah, I love, I keep meaning to get back to a Commander night at Athena because I've heard they're getting up to like 60 people fairly regularly now, which is banging. But I have actually, you'll be pleased to know, spent more money than I should have done, upgrading my, like, it's not my CDH deck, but my like 8 out of 10 deck. I've made it. So
your
it's a
Ragga
bit more.
Dragger.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a bit more than. Yeah. Like there's like.
Well, we'll have to do a
Force
Monday
of
night
wills and stuff have made it into the into that.
But we can't stop playing badminton, which is our other side hustle.
To
sit down more.
That is very true. So speaking of not sitting down, we will end the show there. Hopefully we'll see you on I think it's the 16th. We're going to be live straight after FNM.
Yes, yeah.
The idea is FNM finishes about half term. We're aiming to be on around 11ish, somewhere around there. We'll stream for an hour or so. Maybe we'll stream longer. I don't know. It's going to be a lot less structured and a lot more alcohol related than these podcasts. But it'll be a good time. It'll be on Twitch. And obviously, as we mentioned at the start, we're going to all the local RCQs: Skyward, Langdon, Athena. We're going to Axion. If you're there, we hope to see you. And more importantly, we're providing coverage of the March 10th Skyward Games one, me and Todd, and Pro Tour competitor Raoul Zimmerman is from Team Axion, I should say that, right? Like, part of Team Axion is joining me on March 24th for the Athena Games one. So it's going to be a blast. We hope to see you there, and thank you for listening to this episode of Templar Talks.
Catch you on the flip side.
Wow, I'm cutting that.